Good evening and welcome tonight. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 issues guidelines on gradual lifting of lockdown in Lagos, Ogun and Abuja. Says banks' offices will reopen from May 4th, but schools will remain shut. Edo State Governor Abdullahi Ganduje is worried the religious and traditional beliefs may fuel community spread of COVID-19 as confirmed cases rise to 115 in the state. Federal government disburses 43.41 billion naira grants to 24 states under World Bank assisted states fiscal transparency, accountability and sustainability program for results. And UK's COVID-19 death toll hits more than 26,000, making it second largest in Europe. Plus business, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London.
On business news, Central Bank of Nigeria resumes forex sales to commercial banks ahead of a gradual easing of the coronavirus lockdown.
On sports news tonight, Swiss Federal Criminal Court closes the 2006 FIFA World Cup bid corruption trial owing to the coronavirus pandemic.
And from Abuja, court dismisses the application for bail variation filed by former chairman of a defunct pension reform task team, Abdul Rashid Maina, as his trial for alleged money laundering continues.
State governors as well as federal and state lawmakers have been asked to prioritize provision of COVID-19 isolation and treatment centers as more cases are expected in the days ahead. That request is coming from the daily briefing of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in Abuja, where the Minister of Health said the recently increased case findings and testing capacity will lead to the detection of more cases. The task force also warns that there would be very strict enforcement of all health advisories during the post-lockdown period, which will commence on Monday, May 4th.
Secretary to Government of the Federation to please come to the podium.
Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, who doubles as the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, begins the day's briefing, highlighting some of the advisories in the post-lockdown era that will commence on Monday, May 4th. He informs the gathering about how these advisories will be enforced.
Premises and businesses that will be gradually reopened are mandated to ensure that the following preparatory steps are taken. A, fumigation and decontamination. B, arrangement made for physical distancing. C, provision of hand sanitizers and hand washing facilities. I want to emphasize the need for security agencies to strictly enforce these new measures that have been put in place.
Although the recent surge in the number of cases in the country is a cause for concern, the PTF says it's a wake-up call for politicians to prioritize the provision of isolation centers while urging health workers to keep pushing.
Another pressing urgency is the need to provide and prepare isolation centers and more bed spaces in all states of the Federation. I wish to apply to each state authority and Federal Capital Territory to give first-line attention to this requirement in order to meet expectations and obligations.
But the other group of people I'd like to mention today are healthcare workers. Across our country, many people are away from their families. Many people have been away from their families for 6 weeks to 2 months. Whether you're working clinically, whether you're a public health surveillance officer, whether you're a driver, whether you're an ambulance driver or driving a pickup, or any part you play in this response, not to give up. We need all of us, we need all of you to keep pushing.
Further clarification is also given on the gradual easing of the lockdown, as announced by President Buhari, as well as the expansion of the social register.
We have been in touch with the CBN governor. Moving on from Monday, banks will open. They will operate normal services from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., so that's 6 hours. but there will be the usual restrictions we would expect. From the point of view of agriculture and rural development, companies involved in food processing can commence operation.
On the issue of the directives by Mr. President that we expand the social register by 1 million, that has begun already, and we're anticipating to reach a target of 3.6 by the middle of May.
Nigeria currently has over 1,530 confirmed cases of COVID-19, as many anticipate a further surge in the numbers, with the proposed easing of the lockdown beginning from Monday, May 4th, 2020.
And here in Lagos, for those who have not been able to run their businesses since the lockdown, there is some good news. The state governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has announced that businesses are to resume next Monday, but companies are to operate between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. with a staff capacity of 60%. He also adds that whistleblowers are encouraged to report companies which flout the rules, and a committee will be charged with the responsibility of ensuring the directives are implemented.
From May 4, 2020, businesses will be allowed to operate within a framework that is called a controlled easing phase. We do not want to shut down our entire economy, so we're expected to have a gradual easing of their businesses. It is a gradual and controlled easing of the lockdown. We'll continue to monitor with our public situation, and we'll begin to check the economic impacts as always. Companies that choose to operate within this controlled easing environment would operate within the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. They're also directed to operate at the maximum of 60% of their staff capacity. All motor parks and garages must avoid overcrowding. Social distancing is required for passengers queuing to board any of these buses. All buses should load to a maximum of 60% of their full capacity, meaning that if your capacity is 10 passengers, you cannot load more than 6 at every given time. Commercial motorcycles, popularly known as Okadas, are to be suspended even after the partial lockdown. We will be setting up a committee that will fashion out how the implementation of all of these directives would work out between now and Monday.
And in Borno State, where the COVID-19 death toll has risen to 9, the state government has acknowledged that it is an indication that community spreading has begun in the state, necessitating a review of strategy by the state's response. According to the Commissioner for Health, Dr. Salihu Kwayabura, part of the new strategy is to commence community testing, targeting at least 1,000 people daily. This comes as the state records 6 deaths in the last 24 hours. Internally displaced persons in Niger State are worried about the condition of IDP camps provided by the state government. The challenges, according to them, include shortage of drugs, inadequacy of accommodation, and other basic amenities that are currently overstretched. They want the federal and state governments to improve conditions for their well-being. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
Kulera Sani is a displaced person from Koki village in Shiro local government area. She and her 2-year-old son have been at the Kuta Central Primary School for about a week following an attack by bandits on their community. They are part of the over 1,500 other IDPs who are suffering a similar fate at the Kuta camp.
We want government to assist us by providing sufficient drugs to the IDP camp here.
Since the renewed attacks in Shiroro, Rafi and Munya local government areas of Niger State by bandits, many lives have been lost, several others injured, and at least over 5,000 persons have been displaced. According to the police, the latest attack on Erina in Shiroro local government area claimed lives and properties.
I have about 246 women children about 662. We have male about 34. In total, that is 933.
The casualty we received on these cows, most of them were fractured, and then they were picking down to Kuta town here yesterday night. Some were slaughtered. Only one got dead.
With increasing population of IDPs, accommodation is a major challenge. Sometimes over 50 persons, both adults and children, are housed in a classroom. Then hygiene becomes another problem.
From the inception, they were using one latrine. The council chairman came in. First and foremost, he sank a borehole here for the provision of portable drinking water.
Already, Niger State has recorded 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19. The need to check the situation of the IDPs has become imperative, as social distancing and other preventive measures that will curb the spread of the virus are scarcely observed in the camps. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
In neighboring Edo State, 125 Almajiris who were sent home by the Gombe state government have been received and isolated for 14 days by the state government at Government Secondary School in Damaturu, the state capital. However, some residents there are fearful that the returnees could pose a threat to society, as some might have contracted the virus already. There's also concern about social distancing and availability of water for hand washing, as these are absent at the isolation center. The Edo State government, which is one of 3 yet to record outbreak of the disease, is mute on whether there are plans to evacuate the Almajiris in the state to their home state, as most of them are still seen roaming the streets. From the northeast to the southeast, where the Ebonyi State Governor Dave Umahi has been speaking about the condition of the index case of the coronavirus in the state, the governor, who spoke to journalists at Government House Abakaliki, explained that the index case is in stable condition at the isolation center and has not exhibited any symptoms. He noted that the case was caught in transit with 3 other persons who have tested negative.
This case was caught on transit. Right now, the young man is at the treatment center. He has not shown any symptom. Unfortunately, we saw what was circulating in the social media. The young man did not say so. I spoke to him this morning. He's in a very stable condition. So it's very strong, it's very stable. The test was done twice, and the 3 passengers he was carrying, their tests were also done twice, and they all tested negative, but this particular person tested positive. Our curfew will be amended to what Mr. President said, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. But that will be at the border locations, 300 meters radius, which means Ebonyans are free to trade into the night, to walk into the night. You are no longer restricted, but at the border location, 300 meters radius. If you are seen by 8 p.m. to 5:59 a.m., you will be arrested and tried under COVID-19 law.
In part 2 after the break, we'll be joined by an infectious diseases consultant, Dr. Ephraim Acosta, to examine the rising cases of coronavirus in Nigeria despite the month-long lockdown and ahead of its gradual lifting. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us to watch the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 issues guidelines on gradual lifting of lockdown in Lagos, Ogun and Abuja. It says banks, offices will reopen from May 4th, but schools will remain shut. Edo State Governor Edo State is worried that religious and traditional beliefs may fuel community spread of COVID-19 as confirmed cases rise to 115 in the state. Federal government disburses 43.41 billion naira grants to 24 states under World Bank assisted states fiscal transparency, accountability and sustainability program for results. And the UK's COVID-19 death toll hits more than 26,000, making it the second largest in Europe. Plus business and news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Sokoto in northwest Nigeria has recorded 3 COVID-19 deaths. The state governor, Aminu Tambuwal, announced this in a statement issued by his special advisor on media and public affairs. According to the governor, all 3 victims had a history of underlying health issues such as diabetes, asthma, and high blood pressure. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control had announced that 9 new cases of the disease were confirmed in Sokoto as of Tuesday. As of now, the state has 16 active cases, with the number of confirmed cases at 19. We also understand Jigawa has 19 cases of coronavirus and 1 death. We're now being joined on the News at 10 by an infectious diseases consultant, Dr. Ephraim Acosta. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
It's good to be here again.
Yes, indeed. You have been here before.
Yeah.
So it does appear we're having a rise in the number of cases as well as the number of deaths, unfortunately. And this is happening just as work is expected to resume next week. Would you say the lockdown has been successful, looking at the circumstances in which we're resuming work?
Well, successful is relative in the sense that one of the major aims of the lockdown really was to flatten the curve, not to completely stop the cases.
Yeah.
And in truth, in that aspect, you would think that the rise was delayed. The expected rise was supposed to have earlier, but it was delayed till now. What is of concern really is that now that the rise is occurring, work is supposed to resume. The implications of this really is what is really concerning on the long run.
Yeah, and indeed, because social distancing is key, to curbing the coronavirus. So how possible will it be to maintain social distancing in the office if you're asking for 60% of the workforce to resume?
Ideally, it should be possible. Now, people are already talking about post-COVID-19, workplace, how it's going to be like. And in truth, offices should be able to adjust to this reality. However, whether people have what it takes, offices and organizations have what it takes to do this and still be productive is another thing entirely. Because, some offices are operating out of very confined spaces indeed. To ensure distancing in that kind of environment is going to be really, really tough. But I think it could be a good thing going forward, whether it's for transportation or for offices. It could be a good thing going forward. But I can tell you in the beginning it's going to be quite challenging maintaining social distance and also ensuring that there's productivity.
Yeah, and you hear the governor talking about the personal responsibility everyone has, to maintaining, good hygiene and all of that. What are the rules you think should be followed, especially in the workplace, going forward and seeing that more people will have to interact with one another? I know one of them is wearing a face mask, but then you also have to determine how long the face mask should be worn. And if you're someone who moves around a lot, it's quite difficult having a covering on your nose and your mouth. You may be out of breath for a while.
I think it's important to form these disciplines. So he has a personal hygiene, but with the issue of face masks, like you rightly mentioned, I think people don't need to form the habit and form that discipline. Because other than that, I know the temptation of not just to keep the face mask on, but I've seen videos and clips of online where people, and I've seen this even on one-on-one, where people put face masks on, but when they want to talk to someone, they pull it down. and leave it on their chins.
Or
Or when they want to
guilty
sneeze.
of that once or twice.
When they want to sneeze, they will remove it and sneeze into the open air.
Okay, no.
I mean, it's so these are all things that people really need to be conscious of. And also, but additionally, this issue of touching the face and learning to touch, I think these are things that people really need to do, that as well as touching surfaces. I've had people subconsciously, while you're climbing a staircase, have to hold on to a railing. And these are high, we call them high touch surfaces, where people touch, everybody passing through that touches, doorknobs. Some you can't do without. But then again, offices, for example, doors, you don't have to keep doors that have handles so people need to open them with handles anymore. You have to have doors so people can just push open with elbows and all of the other things that people and organizations can make happen. Like water taps, for example. You don't have to put a water tap, something that will squeeze, what's it called, unscrew before it closes or opens. You can use ones that you can just use the elbow. And all these are things that we may need to face, going forward.
Yes,
if we must
it sounds like you're advising the total infrastructural change for people to be able to exist in the workplace. So thank you so much, Dr. Ephraim Acosta. Always a pleasure having you on the News at 10.
Thank you.
Let's get more now. The News at 10 from Linda Achebe. She's in our studio in Abuja. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Amarachi. On his part, the Kano State Governor, Abdullahi Ganduje, is worried that religious and traditional beliefs may fuel community spread of the coronavirus, which has risen to 115 as at the last count. He expressed this concern to a delegation of the Presidential Task Force visiting the state after it experienced rapid jumps in the number of cases. The PTF delegation says the federal government wants to avoid the situation where Kano becomes a threat to the rest of the country. Our correspondent Idris Jibrin reports.
It was a special briefing by the Kano Rapid Response Team to the Presidential Task Force. Governor Abdullahi Ganduje took this one on himself, raising fears that community transmission may be redefined in Kano, which he describes a hugely populated traditional cosmopolitan city.
Now the issue is community transmission in a populated area. This is the big problem. It's a Herculean task, but it's a task that must be done.
The rising cases of COVID-19 in Kano mean many healthcare workers will be exposed, with some already infected. The governor advocates an increase in the provision of personal protective kits.
The health workers, they are doing an extraordinary job. They are sacrificing their lives. The issue of personal protective equipment is absolutely necessary.
Meanwhile, the isolation facilities in Kano are being streamlined to cater to mild cases and severe.
The delegation will go and see where we're going to be housing some of our mild cases that require little medical care.
According to the latest NCDC figures, Kano State has a record of 3 deaths from COVID-19 and an additional 38 cases, bringing the state's total number of positive cases to 115.
Anybody looking at Nigeria as a nation knows that Kano State is very important because of so many factors. Strategic position in the economy, population size, and even globally. Whatever happens in Kano is potentially happening all over the world.
In addition to the unexplained death, the state seems to be in dire need of help, a situation the federal government is not taking lightly, saying may turn out to be a potential threat to the rest of the country. Idris Jibrin, Channels Television News.
No fewer than 986 people have been arrested by the police in Kaduna State for disobeying the quarantine order imposed by the state government as part of measures to contain the spread of coronavirus pandemic. Among them are religious leaders and beer parlor operators. Parading the arrested persons in his office, the Kaduna State Commissioner of Police, Umar Muri, says enforcement of the lockdown and social distancing directive have become imperative in order to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the state. The federal government has disbursed 43.41 billion naira as performance-based grants to 24 eligible states under the World Bank-assisted States Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability Program for results. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, confirmed this in a statement today, explaining that the disbursement follows the participation of the states in the recent annual performance assessment carried out by the Office of the Auditor General for the Federation. The statement shows that the 24 states which met the eligibility criteria include Abia, Adamawa, Bauchi, Benue, Delta, Edo, Ekiti, Enugu, Gombe, as well as Jigawa, Kaduna and Kano states. Mrs. Ahmed explains that the World Bank Assistance Program aims to strengthen fiscal management at the state level to ensure effective utilization of financial resources in a transparent, accountable and sustainable manner. When the News at 10 returns, we have more updates on COVID-19. Plus, Central Bank of Nigeria resumes forex sales to commercial banks ahead of gradual easing of a coronavirus lockdown. Join us again.
Welcome back to the News at 10. School children in Edo State are still receiving lessons from home through the Edo Best at Home, a digital platform which serves as an alternative to regular academic programs. Schools remain shut over the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the parents' success, Imasweng, who is already teaching her children at home, says she prefers this arrangement to the regular school program as it affords the pupils better opportunity to interact with the teacher.
On Monday, April 27, the Governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, launched the Edo Best at Home, an extension of the Edo Basic Education Sector Transformation, Edo Best. This digital platform enables pupils to learn at home using resources downloaded from an online database. The state government says the platform is part of efforts to ensure there is no interruption in the academic calendar due to the partial lockdown in place over the coronavirus pandemic.
This program will no doubt alleviate some of the anxieties of our parents who will be concerned that their children are not attending schools. And it will provide a robust learning system that will positively engage the children during this period of partial lockdown.
The e-learning is already in progress. Success Imasweng, a mother of 4, is having a class for her children at home. She is guided by the curriculum downloaded from the Edo Best website.
This is for Daisy from my room. No, that's for Daisy.
Mrs. Imasweng sees at least one good side to the stay-at-home order.
Because of this COVID-19, school didn't open. At least with this one, they learn, and instead of a large classroom where the children will not we feel free to interact with the teachers, but with this e-learning at home, they feel free to interact with the parents.
The Edo State government says the e-learning offers 4 hours of learning content daily, and a partnership with a mobile technology company provides zero data access for parents.
Now to the judiciary. A federal high court in Abuja, presided over by Justice Okunabang, has dismissed the application for bail variation filed by the former chairman of the defunct Pension Reforms Task Team, Abdurrashid Maina. Mr. Maina is standing trial for alleged money laundering to the tune of 100 billion naira pension funds. He had approached the court seeking to vary the bail condition granted him on January 28th, mandating him to provide a serving senator or member of the House of Representatives as a surety. The court had varied the bail conditions granted Mr. Minor in November 2019, mandating him to provide 2 serving senators as surety. The bail bond had earlier been reduced from 1 billion naira to 500 million naira. Upon his inability to meet the said varied conditions, Mr. Minor asked for a further variation. It's time now for business news. Here's Kayode Okikiolu.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial star 894 hash now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Amarachi, and you're welcome to Business News. Well, the Central Bank of Nigeria says it has resumed provision of foreign exchange to all commercial banks with over $100 million per week made available for school fees and essential imports, which are needed to revamp economic activities across the country. Well, this comes as the COVID-19 lockdown begins to ease up, while business activities are expected to gradually return to normal from next week. The CBN in a statement today says that it has also resumed sales of forex to bureau de change operators in the country, which is expected to help meet dollar demands for business and personal travels, as well as forex needs for retail purposes. And following the approval of the $3.4 billion emergency loan facility requested by Nigeria from the International Monetary Fund, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has been speaking about what the funds will be deployed to accomplish. She told Channels Television in an exclusive interview on our program Politics Today that the funds will go to, among other things, social intervention programs.
I want to assure all Nigerians that this is a fund that is going to be used judicially for purposes that are including health, social development, as well as bridging the very significant revenue shortfall that we have. We have had to put in place and assure the multilateral institutions that are borrowing us governance structures to ensure that the funds are used properly and that there is transparent reporting in the use of the funds. The National Assembly will, of course, be exerting their oversight function on the use of these funds.
It's a company news now. One of Nigeria's fastest growing mobile money operator, PalmPay, has launched a 100 million naira coronavirus support fund to encourage the fight against the pandemic. In a statement, PalmPay says the fund is meant to provide support for organizations working on the front line as they respond to the pandemic and also give incentives to their customers who are diagnosed with COVID-19. The company explains that any of its customers who gets infected with the novel coronavirus can make claim from the company's 100,000 naira per individual COVID-19 payout fund to help cushion the effect of any hardship. In addition, PalmPay has also introduced its free money transfers platform to promote hitch-free digital transaction while providing at least 100 million people with relevant, easy-to-use and affordable financial services to minimize their exposure to physical cash, which is one of the ways the virus is known to spread. Meanwhile, PalmPay says with the launch of its apps for Android and iPhone 6 months ago, it has already processed 2 billion naira in transactions per month after obtaining a license from the Central Bank of Nigeria as it aims to build the largest payment platform in Nigeria and across the continent. Let's head over to the NSE, where Nigeria's stock market maintains its positive posture for a third consecutive session this week. And that's amid continued interest for the shares of Tier 1 banks as well as MTN Nigeria. Temple Ashaju has the details.
Thank you and welcome to the Stock Market Report. With the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown set for easing next week, equities seem to have found a new price level as some of the major counters went on full bid today. And the all-share index improved today by some 62 basis points, while the equity capitalization closed at 11.91 trillion naira. FBN Holdings was on full bid and contributed the highest in volume to the total 277 million units valued at 2.5 billion naira in 4,464 deals. The oil and gas segments gained some traction today, going by the bargain hunting that we saw on Adover PLC. Consumer goods and, of course, the industrial goods segment of the market came next. But Cordville PLC had the highest in terms of capital appreciation, while Etana PLC lost the highest during the session. That's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
Thank you, Temple. Outside of the country, the U.S. economy shrank in the first quarter by its fastest rate, down by 4.8% after lockdowns aimed at curbing the coronavirus pandemic, which choked off economic activity. According to a preliminary estimate from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, this marks the first negative gross domestic product reading since the 1.1% decline in the first quarter of 2014 and the lowest level since the 8.4% plunge in the Q4 of 2008. The blow to the American consumer, the most significant driver of U.S. economic growth, was evident in a 7.6% drop in personal consumption, which marked the biggest decline since 1980, when exports dropped 8.7%, while imports fell 15.3%. Well, despite negative economic data from the world's biggest economy, stocks on Wall Street ended midweek session much higher. And this, of course, the S&P 500 on track for its best month since 1974. Here are some of the figures. Well, thank you for watching Business News Tonight. I am Kayode Okikiolu. The news at 10 continues with Amarachi.
Thanks, Kayode. Controversy still surrounds the quality of previously confiscated rice distributed among some southwest states as palliatives. The Oyo State government says it is not pleased with the quality of rice sent to it from the customs warehouses for distribution to residents of the state, saying it leaves much to be desired. But in Ogun and Edo states, the government officials acknowledge receipt of the products, though they have not commenced distribution to residents.
This meeting between the representatives of the Oyo State government and customs management in Ibadan discussed the rice sent to the state as palliative by the federal government. Prior to the supply of the consignment on April the 21st, state government officials inspected them at the customs warehouse before they were transported to the government warehouse near the Ministry of Agriculture. But 2 days after taking delivery, government officials say the rice had gone bad and unfit for consumption.
We've inspected it, we've done a random selection and selected, and we've seen that similar thing applies across board. And we've been instructed, and we are following a suit with the instruction. The committee has agreed. We find almost all the commissioners that are applicable standing behind me here now to return this back to the source.
Reacting to this development, the Oyo and Osun Customs Command, in a press statement by its spokesperson, says it is not responsible for the so-called contaminated rice, as the state did a thorough inspection before taking it to their warehouse. The statement reads further. The command wishes to reiterate that weevils do not hide, and in the process of loading the vehicles, traces of weevils will have been noticed on the floor, on the bags, on the loaders, or on the trucks, bearing in mind that the entire process was in the presence of CAC, Oyo State. In neighboring Osun State, the government confirmed receiving the rice from the federal government, just as the chairman of Ondo State Palliative Committee clears the air on the state of what they got.
We have rice from the federal government in our warehouse. We've not started distributing the one from the federal government. One, it has to go through quality control, which is what is happening right now.
Irrespective of the source, must be subjected to thorough examination. And we did that, and we discovered that majority of what was brought in, most of them are okay. But we spotted some that are not okay.
For now, the Oyo State government says it will return its share of the rice to the customs, but the Oyo Osun Customs Command insists that the bad rice did not come from them.
Still ahead on the news at 10, UK's COVID-19 death toll hits more than 26,000, making it the second largest in Europe. And more from our London studios and around the world in 5. Stay with us. Welcome back. The United Kingdom now has Europe's second highest official death toll from COVID-19, as revealed in new figures from Public Health England. The report shows some 26,097 people died across the UK after testing positive for COVID-19 as at the afternoon of April 28th. It means the United Kingdom has had more COVID-19 deaths than France or Spain have reported. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Hello and good evening from the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5.
But it's mostly ground corn. That's the
US President Donald Trump has ordered meat processing plants to stay open to protect the nation's food supply amid the coronavirus pandemic. He invoked a Korean War-era law from the 1950s to mandate that plants continue to function amid industry warnings of strain on the supply chain. 22 US meat packing plants across the American Midwest have closed during the outbreak.
Thank you for being a part of this program.
Meanwhile, US Vice President Mike Pence, the man who leads the White House Coronavirus Task Force, has visited a top US hospital without wearing a mask, despite the medical center's own rules that visitors should wear personal protective equipment. Mr. Pence appeared to be the only person without a facial covering. He defended his decision as necessary in order to meet with staff and patients. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's fiancée, Carrie Simons, has given birth to a baby boy during the 6th week of the coronavirus lockdown in the UK. It's after Johnson was discharged from hospital on April the 12th after himself contracting COVID-19. Simons also had symptoms of the virus. A spokeswoman for the Prime Minister and his partner said both mother and baby are doing very well. A fire at a construction site in South Korea has killed at least 36 people and injured another 7. All of the victims were construction workers who had been building a warehouse in the city of Incheon, about 80 kilometers southeast of Seoul. A representative for the provincial fire department said they were still working to determine the number of casualties. Senegal's authorities have begun a campaign to distribute food aid to vulnerable citizens as the country remains in lockdown. The country's Minister for Community Development handed out the first food kit in Guinor, a suburb just outside the capital Dakar. He said that 1 million households across the country would receive a package containing oil, sugar, soap, pasta and rice, worth around $109. Irfan Khan, the Indian actor famous for his roles in internationally acclaimed movies such as Life of Pi and Slumdog Millionaire, has died at the age of 54. He had battled with cancer for a long time and is survived by his wife and 2 children.
I am thrilled to be part of your campaign.
The former US presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has endorsed the campaign of her fellow Democrat Joe Biden. The endorsement marks the latest in a series of high-profile Democrats lining up behind Biden ahead of what is expected to be a tight contest against President Donald Trump.
Right now, if we had a president who not only listened to the science, put facts over fiction, but brought us together, showed the kind of compassion and caring that we need from our president and which Joe Biden has been exemplifying throughout his entire life. Think of what it would mean if we had a real president, not just somebody who plays one on TV, but somebody who gets up every morning worried about the people that he's responsible for leading during this crisis. Well, I know what a difference it would make because I've been there. I've seen firsthand what presidents can and should do. And I, like so many Americans, really wish that we had that kind of leadership now.
I'm happy again. And finally, residents in Geneva had the answer to the miserable weather on Tuesday with a rendition of Singing in the Rain. In fact, people here have been meeting nightly on their balconies for weeks to lift spirits by singing and dancing. Neighbours living in the apartments of the Roundhouse, a century-old housing block, get together around 6 p.m. every night to take part in the nightly choir.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Jeffrey is on us standing by now with sports news.
Thanks, Amarachi, and welcome to Sports News. Nigerian club Vandreza have confirmed the suspension of the contracts of their entire playing personnel till further notice. The club's chief operating officer, Kingsley Ogbonna, told Channels Television that the uncertainties posed by the COVID-19 pandemic informed their decision. FIFA has confirmed that the Swiss prosecutors have ended the corruption trial relating to Germany's 2006 World Cup bid owing to a legal limit. The World Football Governing Body said charges against 4 former football officials have been dropped after the suspension by Swiss Federal Criminal Court. The suspension is due to the coronavirus pandemic, which took the case past its allotted time frame. Standard League have asked their former players to invest money and help ensure the survival of the club as they face being relegated to the amateur ranks. Reports say Standard League have written to Belgian internationals Maroon Fellaini and Axel Witsel, who began their careers at the club before moving abroad. The players are being asked to join a group of investors in buying the club's stadium and then rent it out, thereby raising the cash they need to stay afloat. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has announced that professional athletes will be able to return to training from Monday, May the 4th, as the country plans to return to normal. Sanchez said professional athletes, high-performance centers, and sports federations are authorized to structure their training sessions by running shifts. And that's it on sports. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks, Jeff. And the main news again. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today issued a guideline on the gradual lifting of the lockdown in Lagos, Ogun and Abuja. The PTF said banks and offices will be open from May 4th, but schools will remain shut. Also today, Edo State Governor Edo State said he is worried that religious and traditional beliefs may fuel community spread of COVID-19 as the confirmed cases in the state rose to 115. And the UK's COVID-19 death toll today hit more than 26,000, making it the second largest in Europe. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. Good night. Stay safe.